Wise men say only fools rush in. So I took my time. I did my research. I made sure to find an interview guest that was perfect for the first interview of Mindset Monday, and I found her. This week, I am pleased to introduce all of you to a very special guest whose name sounds almost the same as mine. You're about to meet Ksenia Avdulova, and she is a wellness advocate, authenticity, and mindfulness practitioner whose life choices I think are so inspiring, especially in a year like 2020. So I hope you guys enjoy this interview. What's up, YouTube? We are back with another episode of Mindset Monday. My name is Ksenia, and today I have an interview guest. I am happy to introduce all of you to Ksenia Avdulova. Yes, we have almost the same name. She is a wellness influencer, a content creator, an entrepreneur, the host of the Woke and Wired podcast, and someone who teaches what she calls the conscious social media method to entrepreneurs so they can have a little more mindfulness and some healthy boundaries around these addictive devices. And today we are going to talk all about her work creating her brand Breakfast Criminals and how a recent move out of New York City has been changing her life. So welcome to the show.
So excited to be here, Ksenia, and to reconnect after our dance session. I think that's the last time I saw you. And yeah, moving out of the city has been a big trend, and we did it a little bit before the quarantine hit and the big move out of the city started. So we have about a year of experience under our belt, and I have a lot of things I would be happy to share.
Awesome, awesome. So I want to hear first about the Breakfast Criminals brand. That is your Instagram that has thousands and thousands of followers, and it's a place where you post very beautiful photos of very inspiring breakfast meals. I'll tell everybody that Ksenia and I met in a landmark seminar, and her boyfriend and I knew each other already, and then we were involved in a lot of personal growth work in New York City, and I ended up teaching her and Eric a lesson in bachata at a dance studio in the city. And at that lesson, I was just about to move into a new apartment, and she gave me a beautiful heart bowl. So if anyone needs a beautiful heart bowl, you can get those from her. But I want to hear more about the Breakfast Criminals brand and the heart bowl. So how did you start that?
That's a great question. I've been a storyteller my whole life. I studied journalism. I grew up in Russia. And for me, personal development, self help, self love journey started when I was a teen because I never felt like I fit in. And I was reading all these books that were titled How to Make Anyone Fall in Love with You, How to Make a Man Interested in You. Some of them were censored. I'm not going to say them. But it was all about really missing that piece within of understanding that I can't go out there and spend all this energy making sure that others love me until I find that source of acceptance and kindness within myself. So it started with learning how to eat intuitively and learning about a lot about nutrition. Because growing up, I did a lot of dieting and just lots of negative self talk around body image. So for me, trying out a million different diets and a million different exercise studios and boutique fitness and realizing that none of that really connects me to my own inner flow and my own unique gifts in the world, I turned to yoga and I turned to mindfulness. I ended up doing yoga teacher trainings in both and going on a pilgrimage to India where I just had this glimpse into having access to that self-love, having access to that kindness within. And I just came back knowing that I have to share this. And there's simple practices that everyone can do to cultivate that spaciousness that allows us to connect to nourishment and love within, which then connects us to intuition and connecting to our path in life and our gifts and how we express them. So for me, learning how to speak to myself more kindly, how to eat more kindly, and sharing that along the way on Instagram on Breakfast Criminals has been a way to do that. And the heart bowl that you just showed was this symbol of starting your day with self-love and nourishment, because for me, it all started when I was dealing with a heartbreak, dealing with having lost my dream job in New York City. Everything was just crashing down. I lost my visa and I was told that I have 60 days to leave the country. So I had to get rid of my apartment, pack up my office, my relationship shattered. And that's the place I was picking myself up from. That's where the heart bowl came in. And, for me, food has always been this language through which we communicate both with ourselves, subconsciously with our bodies. Just the act of when we sit down to eat, taking a moment to express gratitude, or maybe just to assemble a nice, pretty plate. That on a subconscious level wires us to treat ourselves with that respect that we want from others. So the heart bowl is such an invitation to really turn your mealtime into rituals. And for me, using that food as a language of connection, both with yourself and with others, led to just so many things. I remember when I was younger, I wanted to be a fashion blogger really badly, but I had all these stories about how I can't be one because, I'm not thin enough, I'm not stylish enough, all these limiting beliefs that weren't even true. And for me, once I started sharing things that were actually making difference in my life and living that life of mindfulness and sharing it, is where everything clicked, and Breakfast Criminals totally picked up. And it was about 2014, I think. Within a year, had 10,000 followers. And listen, back then on Instagram, like, no one was an influencer. That was not a term. No one was doing paid partnerships with brands or sponsored posts. A few people, like I could count them on one hand, had 10,000 followers. So for me, it was such a big deal. And it was an indicator that once we really start putting our energy and attention into things that are aligned with our path and what feels alive in our experience, even if it feels scary and vulnerable and like you can't monetize it, you can't, pay for your bills by doing that. Ultimately, the more we exercise that, the more it all comes together. And that's what I teach now through the conscious social media method, through my programs, through consulting with conscious entrepreneurs and coaches and healers, just through my own example and knowing that it's possible.
Awesome. Yeah. So it sounds like you went through a series of breakdowns where you had to focus on self care and self love. And, what's better than having a beautiful breakfast and a all the shape of a heart to remind you to start your day loving yourself, right? So yeah, so that's such a beautiful story. So now I want to ask you all about this move out of New York City that you recently did, because you didn't just leave a big city. You made a conscious choice to live in a tiny house in the middle of nature, upstate, and just surround yourself with nature. And I want to ask you how that's been impacting your mood and your mindset, especially in the middle of a pandemic and in the middle of quarantine.
Oh, it changes everything. When we came back, we were actually traveling. We were being nomadic for the winter, me and my fiance. And we came back to the city. We were staying in a family apartment who got stranded in Florida because of quarantine. And remember the first time we came up to the cabin, just spending a day here, not even a night, completely rewired my nervous system, the way I slept, the way I felt. It's like stress got melted away. And that reminded me, whoa, okay, that's why we moved from the city to the country. And for me, I'm no stranger to this kind of lifestyle because growing up in Moscow, everyone in Russia has a country house, which we call dacha. If you're Russian, you might know this. And so you grow up helping your family with chores like gardening. One of my responsibilities, because I love fire, double Leo here, I was responsible for creating fire that would heat up the water for us to take shower, like a big barrel that was on a roof in a tiny little shed. And foraging mushrooms with my grandfather was one of the most magical childhood memories that I still have and cherish. So I've always been drawn to these kind of outdoor forest fairy activities. And in the city, it wasn't really part of our life. We didn't have a car, so we didn't really leave the city. And Eric, my fiance, for a long time, he was watching all these living big in a tiny house type of videos on YouTube obsessively. And it took me a while to get into it. He lured me into it. And then after about 9 months of him obsessing about it, I kind of got interested and started looking at those videos with him. And then he was just like, why don't we go look at properties? And we started looking at properties. And even though financially it didn't really make sense because we didn't have a ton of savings, we were paying really high Brooklyn rent. Something about it was just lining up. And I remember one of the properties, I felt like I got this message from the trees saying, this is your land. And so we ended up buying it. And what came with it is this tiny little wooden cabin that was very basic. super nice tiny kitchen, but everything else was like a plastic shower. And it was a very weird setup where the main room, which we used as my office, living room, dining room, and our bedroom, was separate from another tiny room that was on the other side of the house. So like there wasn't really a flow to it. It was pretty dark, and there were lots of things that were working about it, like the property. There's deer coming to visit us and wild turkeys and so much blackberry foraging. It's mind blowing. But in terms of just having the space, you know, for me, someone who records podcasts and Eric is always on the phone super loud doing sales, it it was tough to be in such a tiny space. It's like a studio. Plus, on top of that, we had to minimize our possessions and we had a completely horrific nightmare move. It's all on TikTok if you want to find me. Where's Ksenia? It was really intense and it was tough, and we were not prepared. We didn't know how to take care of property. We didn't have a driveway. So the day that we moved, we and the movers were not actually able to come up the driveway. So the movers ended up dropping all of our belongings at the bottom of the driveway on a public road. And it kept raining for days, so we couldn't get it up. We couldn't find anyone. It was a nightmare. So my takeaway, you know, from a physical standpoint is when you are moving and you're preparing to move, be gentle with yourself and be very prepared. And from an energetic standpoint, looking back, it was all worth it. Even though we lived not so comfortably for a few months in a tiny space, we're now wrapping up a renovation that's really turned this tiny little shack into more of a little dream house, home in the forest. And we also added a little shed, which I'm sitting in, which is our office building. I have my infrared sauna in the back, which is my favorite ritual that changed my life. So just being able to have space to play with and create a lifestyle that supports my creativity, my health, my relationship, my well-being, everything is huge. And part of it, because I know a lot of people watching this probably are creatives and entrepreneurs or want to create a business out of what they love. One of the intuitive hits that I got before I moved is that when we make that move to nature and surround ourselves with this space and quiet where you can see stars every night, where you can hear yourself, unlike New York City sometimes, I knew that it would create the space for me to do something bigger. And I didn't know what it was, but I just followed that intuition blindly. And so what that led to is running and creating the Conscious Social Media Method program several times, and just serving people in a big way of how they show up online, whether they're coaches or entrepreneurs or healers, and holding a really spacious container for people to transform their relationship with social media, through that transform their relationship with themselves, with their business, how they show up and how they make impact. So it's pretty cool. I definitely would recommend it.
Wow. So, first of all, the fact that you have a sauna is like living the dream. This is something that I want in my dream property. I'm such an advocate of saunas. If you guys are not already using sauna technology somehow, oh my God, what a mental, emotional, physical reset, right? To just sweat and then, feel so refreshed afterward. I actually did a sweat lodge in Mexico. I did what you call a temescal ceremony, and it was so powerful. And I had already kind of been training my system, doing a lot of sauna time before that, but it was still pretty intense because it's completely dark, and they have like four puertas or doors of heat that you work your way up to, and it gets so hot, and people are yelling out, and it's just this very cathartic like release of energy. But you obviously don't have to go all the way to Mexico to do that. You can just start with 15 minutes in a sauna. So,
Temescal is magical though. I did that on my 30th birthday. I went to Mexico on a retreat and went to lodge that happened to be on my birthday. And it was life changing. It's so interesting what the heat and intention and community and this kind of surrender to the element of heat can do to our mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, so it sounds like you've got yourself set up with, obviously some of the wellness practices that you already love, whether it's eating well or using the sauna. And it seems like you're almost doing like forest bathing now. Like that's your baseline.
That is the baseline. I do have the book called Forest Bathing where they talk about scientifically proven facts of how spending time in the forest can benefit our nervous system and our overall well-being. I truly believe in that. I actually even started a secret Instagram account I posted on like once called Naked Forest Bathing. Because that's the beauty of having a big property and neighbors far away is that you can do that.
Oh yeah, you can get naked time in the sun, get all the vitamin D you need, right? Yes.
Yep.
Sounds like what other people can take away from what you've done. I mean, not everybody's necessarily going to leave a city, but making space for nature, you're saying, has a huge impact on your mood and your nervous system. Obviously, science bears that out, but if you can make big steps and leaps and commitments toward that, what you're saying is it really alters your mood. Yeah.
For sure. And for some people, it's going to be small steps, like starting to grow your own herbs on your balcony. I never did that, but I know some people do. I prefer a real garden. Um, or maybe getting another house plant, or maybe getting a crystal or incense. I think there's so many ways to connect to nature, or maybe just spend more time in quiet and not doing anything, not being stimulated by anything. But for others, what I really want to do is make sure that you, from my story, that you see that anything is possible, that your wildest dreams, like for me, the infrared sauna was a wildest dream. It seemed so far away. And then it all just came together. And I'm sitting here looking at the fire pit already, imagining my evening of going to the sauna, then sitting by the fire, marshmallows, the whole shebang. And it's so possible, from strategic standpoint. When we were just planning this whole thing, it wasn't possible. But over time, just commitment to that vision and whatever feels right in your body, that intuitive wisdom, it already knows what you need to achieve that next level of who you're meant to be in the world. So my biggest invitation for you listening, because if you're listening here, this is the perfect time for you to hear this, is do whatever it takes to listen to those signs around you that are telling you, move to LA, go check out properties upstate, go spend a weekend at a retreat, go to a sauna in the city and spend some time there. Whatever that guidance is for you,
Yeah.
creating that space really creates the capacity for us to receive even further guidance.
Yeah, yeah. My guidance has really been telling me that, like many people, it's time to reevaluate my relationship to New York City. And I have been definitely looking at my options in terms of getting out of the city for the winter, at least, right? I just see that my mood and my being and my creativity and my ability to be an artist and to make things happen for myself is so enhanced by sunshine. And
Mm.
like seasonal affective disorder is a real thing, and I think it affects everybody to some degree, especially in the Northeast. I don't know how you guys are going to do it, upstate for this winter.
I don't know if we are going to do it. We'll see. Last time we escaped to Argentina.
Perfect. Sounds like a perfect plan. Yeah. So, I can just really resonate with that craving for nature. There have been times where I've left the city and, I went to Costa Rica for 2 weeks, or I went to LA and I had this experience of like, wow, this is so missing in my life, this connection to nature. I'm lucky that I live near a really lovely park, that's a really social place for a lot of people in my neighborhood. But parks are, man-made, and it's interesting to get out into nature that's kind of untouched the way you guys have, and it's just so nice to see like the vibration that you're experiencing on social media. I will make sure that everybody has Ksenia's TikTok and Instagram so they can go see the beautiful little cabin that she has been building herself with her now fiance Eric. I love them both, and I'm so proud of them and happy for them. And you guys can see how truly idyllic it really looks. It's really appealing from the outside. As somebody who doesn't have property and who's living in a city, it's like, oh, I've got to escape. It really makes you want to escape. So, the whole social media thing is so interesting because it feeds you inspiration, right? Tell me
Sure.
about this conscious social media method, though.
So, someone might listen to what I'm saying and say, okay, but how did you pay for a property? How did you get renovations? How did you get an infrared sauna? That sounds good, but like, where'd you get the money? And that's where the conscious social media method comes in, because from my experience, we can use social media as this tool, as this conduit to create value and make money in exchange. So I've done that through many capacities, through creating content for brands. I started by managing social media for other brands, then building my own brand and doing partnerships with brands, whether they pay me to post something on my account about products I already love, or through affiliate relationships where, for the sauna, for example, I have an affiliate relationship with. So whenever anyone buys it through my link, um, I will make a kickback. And that's how a lot of it works, because I spend so much time researching and choosing the best things that really align with my values that it's kind of a sin for me not to share that information later on. And why not make some money along the way? So those are some of the streams of income. And then the other one is teaching how can we bring our inner tech, our intuition, which I keep pointing to, whether that's through sitting in a cacao ceremony, which I'm a big fan of and I also teach, or through meditation or yoga or working out, whatever your way, or maybe doing the dishes or taking a bath. There's so many ways we can connect to that wise within. So it's merging that inner tech, our intuition, all the spiritual work, all the personal development work we've done with how we show up online through smart strategy, having a clear way of monetizing it, and a clear business plan. So that's what I teach with the Conscious Social Media program. It's an 8-week experience. I'm also about to launch a mastermind. And it kind of just fits in together because over the years, after I built Breakfast Criminals to being this award nominated brand and having worked with Whole Foods and Google and just so many United Nations, so many brands around the world and leading retreats, I saw that a lot of people were reaching out to me and saying, how did you do this? How did you build this platform? How can I do this? And so that's where me really digging in my subconscious and also looking back at my actions and really strategizing, okay, dissecting, kind of reverse engineering what I did and seeing what are the things that can actually apply to anyone, that anyone can do to amplify their online presence in a way that feels good to them without feeling like icky or salesy, but more aligned with where their energetic flow already is. So that's what the Conscious Social Media program is. And we talk about Breakfast Criminals and the home. One thing I also want to mention, which I haven't really talked about yet, this will come out at the perfect time. I will be changing the Breakfast Criminals Instagram handle to At Home with Ksenia. So it's going to symbolize being at home in your body, at home in your physical space, and at home in your life. So it's really, kind of zooming out from that language of food, which can be extremely powerful, and it was on my path, into the whole lifestyle where every decision we make contributes to us being more in our path or not. And just being conscious without, being perfectionist, but just being aware with how different things that we choose impact our energy.
Yeah. It really seems like you're an authenticity advocate. That's fundamentally, what you do. You're teaching people how to create their own relationship to home, to nature, to social media, to business. So we're not just doing, what we got stuck doing or imitating people around us. Like if you're inspired by someone else and the way that they're living or promoting their business or brand or, practicing wellness, that's great, but still all the work is really, we know this, it's really to look inward at what do I really need and what is the next best thing for my growth, whether I like it or not, because sometimes the next best thing for your growth is wildly inconvenient and has you, with all your stuff dropped off on a road and where a tree has fallen, right? And you're trying to figure out your move and all that stuff. So I'm going to call you an authenticity advocate, if you don't mind.
Wouldn't call that myself, but I really love it. You really summarized it so beautifully. You're right. For me, it's about sharing glimpses into things that make me feel alive, and maybe me posting a TikTok of a fire will calm someone down, make them feel a little more happy and at home. But then also reminding everyone that there's not one way to do business, to do life, to do relationships, to do social media. And my invitation is to just drop deeper into your personal development and spiritual practices to find the unique way that you're meant to express your gifts in the world, whether that's in business, in food, in home decor, whatever it is. I think we all have very unique medicine. And the more we step into that, the more magnetic we become.
I love that. I love that. I love that. You're the perfect first guest for this series. It's so great. I so resonate with everything that you just said. And I want to switch gears a little bit and ask you, how do you use food to impact your mood? Because that's clearly an area of expertise for you. And you talk a lot about cacao and theobromine versus caffeine. I'm looking to experiment with consuming less coffee soon to see how it affects my REM sleep, for example, because I've been tracking my sleep with my Aura ring, and I want to see if I can get more REM sleep in a night. And maybe it's my relationship to caffeine that's going to alter that, right? You also are, a really big advocate of these beautiful breakfasts, hopefully in a beautiful bowl. Maybe you got it from breakfast criminals, maybe not. Just had to slip the little pitch in there. But you advocate for your breakfast and your morning ritual to be beautiful, and I want to know how you use food to impact your mood.
The slogan for Breakfast Criminals is how you start your days, how you live your life. So I truly believe that how we spend those first waking moments, the thoughts that we have, the space we create, the way we move our bodies, what we do impacts everything else. So just being mindful and conscious and intentional with what we do. And then that sprinkles throughout the day. So my cacao ceremony is something you can read about on breakfastcriminals.com. Is something that completely changed my life because it's this delicious, tangible way of drinking the most whole food, ethically sourced chocolate that nourishes you on so many levels, from theobromine to anandamide, which is happiness molecule. Magnesium relaxes your body. It activates your creativity. It activates your energy, but not in a way that's hype like coffee, but in a very like gentle and playful way. So for me, when you speak of food, cacao is the first thing that comes to mind. It's known as the food of the gods. And there's so many ancient rituals and indigenous groups that have worked with it in a spiritual capacity, in a communal way. So it's really re-emerging now in the West, which is interesting timing. I think it's really needed. I've had the luck of travel to Guatemala with my friends from Cacao Lab to visit some farms and people who are passing down the traditions from the Mayan communities, and it's powerful. And in terms of food, first let me say I'm not trained in nutrition or food. I'm someone who's self-trained, mostly got my MBA in eating food on Instagram. So don't go to me for like medical advice or nutrition advice. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm someone who more stands behind mindfulness, behind our choices. So that goes to both how we eat. I truly believe, and I know that there's research that shows that when we eat in a stressed state, it won't metabolize as well as if we eat in a relaxed state. So just taking a couple of breaths before we eat, or maybe, if I'm stressed out and nervous and on the go, I'd rather skip a meal and wait until my heart rate comes down and I can take the space and enjoy a meal and actually, take it in. But the other aspect of it is sourcing, and something I think about more and more now that I have a garden and grow my own food and source from my neighbors and local farms is, where does it come from and who is involved along the way? Whether that's cacao is unfortunately a very sad industry because there's a lot of money that still goes to child labor, and a lot of it is very unethical. Even if it says fair trade, it means nothing. So whenever you're buying any kind of chocolate, not even just ceremonial cacao, look for farm to bean is one of the indicators to look for. But even better, look at the website of the company and see who are the founders, what's the vibe, what are they really committed to. And so that kind of curiosity around what we put in our bodies and the hands of everyone who touched that along the way and their intentions, I think that is so important, both for us to get the best nutrition on physical, energetic, emotional levels, but also to support the ecosystem of our planet around us, whether that's eating just a little more seasonally, growing just one herb instead of buying at a store, or maybe seeing if you can, shop at the farmers market. Just those little small choices that we all can make to be a little more mindful about food and also everything around it, because ultimately there's so many things in our lifestyle that relate back to food.
Yeah, yeah, and when you know that you're consuming food that was sourced in either an ethical way or an organic way, I mean, I find that aside from the mood enhancing benefit of whatever that food might be, I have more peace of mind about what I'm doing for myself. So I really get that piece of it.
Mm,
So that's great.
yeah.
So I want to just hear a little bit more about this philosophy that how you start your day is how you know, how you live your life. How do you say
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's interesting because when I started Breakfast Criminals, for me, the way that how you start your day is how you live your life looked was these superfood packed smoothie bowls with millions of ingredients, millions of toppings, maybe two of them. And they were quite intricate and they required a lot of different powders and jars and frozen things, and at the time I was living with roommates and I was always the one taking up all the space with my frozen acai. But they forgave me, I think. I shared some acai with them. And now what's funny is I don't eat a lot of breakfast. I might have like a matcha or a cacao or a cold brew made in my compostable bag with some oat milk or cashew milk or hemp milk and maybe like a breakfast bar. Um, for me, it's either, very little breakfast or no breakfast, or a huge breakfast like eggs and toast, something like that. But there's some non-negotiables outside of whatever is on my plate because I'm really intuitive when it comes to that. I really tune to my body, and if I don't want to eat breakfast, I'm not going to eat it. If I want a little small something, I'll eat that. But there's certain rituals that I do that are quite non-negotiable. So as soon as I wake up, I take a teaspoon of coconut oil, put it in my mouth, and I swish it for about 10 minutes, called oil pulling, and that helps your teeth health, your immunity, just kind of takes all the gunk out of your body. Just make sure you don't spit it down the drain because it could clog it up. Spit it into the trash. Highly recommend that. And then I brush my teeth. I drink lots of water with lemon, and those are kind of the things that I never skip. There's kind of an optional array of other things that I do, but that really depends. Ideally, Eric and I will do like a 15-minute yoga flow with Adrian. We'll do a 10-minute X3 workout, which is an absolute game-changing weightlifting sort of band workout. Then we'll do 10 minutes of Wim Hof breathing and 5 to 10 minutes of just, it's so good, life changing, of just sitting in silence. Because once you've done that breathing method, it's on YouTube, it's free, it's incredible. It really takes you places. So I like to take advantage of that and just allow myself to be with whatever that space is. And then we go to our offices and we start our day. That's usually the flow. I also love when garden is in full swing, kind of taking a little swing around and seeing, what new flowers blossomed, what cucumbers have grown, what kind of animals have visited us overnight. Um, but overall, those are kind of different things. So my invitation is to create like a collection of tools that work for you by trying different ones. And then you can see, what really makes a difference for you and really committing to them. I have a video on YouTube showing my morning routine before we moved to the country back in the city, and I share more specifics there. At some points, I've gone through celery juice. That will be like a non negotiable in the morning. I've gone through periods of bulletproof coffee, and it was working for me at the time. And I think the most important thing is to not be dogmatic about anything. There's so many different diets and ways to be nowadays, and it's so easy to get overwhelmed and intimidated. So, whatever is in front of us, just one thing at a time, listening to our body, allowing the space to see how we feel after we consume something, whether that's physical or a new exercise or meditation. That's kind of the bottom line of everything I do, just inviting people to create more ritual throughout the day so that we can tune back into, okay, what's working, what's not, what can I do differently?
Yeah. That's awesome. I also love having a lot of water with lemon and salt in the morning because, I want to get those minerals in when I first get up. I love bulletproof coffee, but I also want to experiment with, having less adrenal stimulation in the morning. But it's really great to hear how you value ritual without being attached to any one ritual that seems ideal, because obviously our idea of what's ideal for right now, or for this moment or this place, is always changing. So I just constantly hear that thread, and you're speaking of like listening to what's right for you, but creating those rituals that give you that sense of wellness every day. And it seems like you've been able to do a lot more of that, living in the middle of the forest recently. So that's beautiful.
Yeah, and having been a nomad twice, once for I think it was like 7 months and another time for about 6 months, you just learn that you don't need a lot of things, and all the things you need are mostly within. And it's just about cultivating those simple practices that make all the difference. And um, for sure, being in nature assists in having that space to tune into within. Well, you can do it anywhere, and there's nature anywhere. So if it just means going to the yard and putting your bare feet on earth, that's such a powerful way to just ground and connect to nature and feel more calm right away.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. I love hearing all of this. I love like just hearing from somebody who's, really doing that work of looking at what's going to cause wellness for you and what's going to make you feel your best. And, if quarantine and 2020 has really taught us anything, it's that we don't always need the things that we think we need to be happy and to be healthy. And I'm so interested in this idea of like, how do I express my principles and values like wellness when I can't do it the way that I'm used to, right? Like how do I express my principles and values with my career if things are not an option anymore? Like quarantine has been making me look at that. Like how do I still be authentic with myself when things have been kind of taken away or changed up, right? And so for a lot of us, I think it's accelerating decisions we maybe would have made it anyway, and in a way that's a beautiful thing in the midst of all the grief and all the loss and all the change. It's nice to see you just like continuing to practice being as mindful as possible in a year like this, rather than being just swept up in survival. And I really hear that in the idea of morning ritual as well, because I think a lot of us wake up and the first thing we do is check our phone and just what emails do I have to respond to, and then you're in survival, and there's not a whole lot of intentionality in that. There's a lot of reacting, right? So if you're a reaction machine, which we know human beings are, when you step outside of your reaction and get into creation instead, deliberate creation is really powerful. So I like hearing that.
Mhm. Yeah, that's one of the pillars of the conscious social media method. Don't look at the phone first thing as soon as you wake up, and don't look at it the final moments of your waking before you fall asleep, because those 5 minutes before you fall asleep is like this energetic portal where anything that gets put in ends up really being embedded in your subconscious and becoming your reality. So if you are someone who is looking to up level your life, which you are because you're watching this, I highly recommend just give it a try for 7 days. No phone first thing in the morning, no phone last minute at night, so that you really have that space to tune into your subconscious, your guidance, your divine messages before you see what everyone else is up to. That goes to both your personal use of social media but also business. What if for just a day you didn't look at all your competitors, you didn't study what all your mentors are doing, your favorite authors and podcasters, but just kind of allowed yourself to be taken around by the sense of wonder that's within you and see what feels alive. And I guarantee that there will be breakthroughs and clarity that will arise that you really did not expect.
Yeah, yeah. And aside from the fact that your phone will mess with your melatonin production, I've noticed when I have the phone on at night right before I go to bed, sometimes I end up dreaming about things that I read that were really negative before I went to bed, right? Like I want to keep practicing. I mentioned in a previous Mindset Monday video the things I'm doing to get better sleep. And one of them is like setting a screen curfew. I have not been successful this past week. It requires a lot of discipline, but wow, when you just turn the phone off, you let your body start to get into what I call like a relaxation session, because we have exercise sessions and we have work sessions, but to do like breath work and I listen to binaural beats at night and just like get ready for bed. It takes a certain amount of discipline if you're not used to doing that, but I love being able to turn off the phone because I have to remind myself, oh, it's going to be there in the morning. Like
Mm.
check all notifications in the morning.
Yeah, it's so, I think what's really important is, again, not to be dogmatic. Like, don't be so hard on yourself. If sometimes I go through periods of launches, when my programs or masterminds or things like that are happening, I'm on the phone most of the time. And sometimes it is the first thing in the morning and last thing at night. But it's just, being real with yourself and being kind to yourself. And also what I want to bring up is just be so conscious with what you let in, what kind of news you watch, who you follow. One of the first steps that we do when we do the conscious social media method is we go and unfollow anyone who doesn't align with our truth and what we want to create in the world, whether that's someone who you want to, learn from. So really fill your feed with things that remind you where you're going. And if things are triggering you, ask yourself, is it even worth having in my feed? And maybe mute all those accounts and follow them. I'm not saying don't have anyone in your feed who doesn't have a different opinion. I think that's different. And having constructively different opinions and deep discussions is important, especially in a climate like that in our country. But at the same time, um, just making sure that you're not spending all of your waking time analyzing your competitors. You're not spending all your waking time looking at others and thinking, why do they have that and why do I don't? Just really make sure that anything that you see, remember that it's a reminder that it's possible for you too. So it's both changing who you follow, but also changing the prism through which you see it. And remembering that if it's in your field of awareness, it's the universe telling you, you got this, you're ready for this, take it.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. That's so great. Thank you so much for talking with me today about the power of ritual and all the ways that we can impact our mood through nature, through authenticity, through food. Tell me now, where can people find you? Where can people get their very own heart bowl? And tell me a little bit about, your podcast. Just tell me where people can find you from here.
Thank you, Ksenia. This was such an awesome conversation. Very few podcasts actually end up touching or interviews on all the aspects of the things that I love and I'm committed to. So I appreciate you holding such a big space. So in terms of where you can connect with me, on Instagram at Home with Ksenia, and also at Where is Ksenia for more of the business mindset, conscious social media stuff. My podcast is called Woke and Wired. My programs are on conscioussocialmediamethod.com. If you're interested in learning about cacao ritual, it's all on Breakfast Criminals. And on TikTok, I'll be changing my handle soon. For now, it's Where's Ksenia. So just go there, you'll find it. I'm sure Ksenia will link it in the show notes. But if you find me in one place, you can be sure that you can find me in all of them.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. I hope to follow more of your adventures on social media in a conscious, mindful way, of course. And congratulations on your engagement. I can't wait to hear more about that. Two people that I love to see are going to be married. And I think that's awesome. So I will see you soon. And thank you so much for talking to all the viewers of Mindset Monday today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, love. Have a magical Monday and week, everyone.
Thank you guys so much for watching that interview. I hope that you found it interesting and inspiring. I love the way that Ksenia has chosen to live her life and make unconventional choices. And looking at her little tiny cabin in the middle of the forest makes me ask myself important questions about where I want to live and how I want to live and how I can spend more time in nature. Because I think nature calls all of us in some form or another. But the question is, are you really listening? There's no denying that it's so good for you. If you guys like this kind of content, please hit the like button. It helps me so much. And subscribe to my channel. I can't wait to bring you more interesting content and interviews like this. I will see you guys again soon with another video. Bye.